Wave 4 is here, ladies and gentlemen, and I think we can all agree that in many ways it delivered, but in some ways, I think it under-delivered. You know the drill, we're gonna rank these races from worst to best, and we're gonna add them to our DLC-wide tier list. Make sure you stick around to the end of the video because there will be an official amendment report that's gonna change some of the rankings from previous videos. I'd like to extend a formal welcome back to Birdo. It's been a long time. Don't know why you weren't here in the first place, but we've missed ya. It's good to see ya. That said, let's jump right into the rankings with number 8. At number 8, we have DS Mario Circuit. Okay, let me preface this one by saying that this wave is overall incredibly strong, and this race, though it is in 8th place here, likely would have scored a little higher if it appeared in some of the earlier waves. Wave 1. But unfortunately, there has to be a number 8. This race really just suffers from circuit syndrome. It's not bad, it's not great. It just takes up a slot in the DLC that I would have rather seen go to a race like Delfino Square or maybe Airship Fortress. But of course, here we are. Even though it is number 8, I do have nice things to say about it. It really is a gorgeous remaster. It's a pretty simple race, so there's not a ton to really say about it, but they really did take this one and make it look all pretty. I specifically love what they did with this portion of the map where we drive through the pipe and into the forest. This forest was not there in the DS version. It was a pleasant surprise to see them go the extra mile and add this in. Look at these lush green trees, the rays of sunlight just peeking through the tree cover. Is that ray tracing? Is there ray tracing in a Mario Kart game? Man, I'm gonna sell my PS5. There's also a wiggler that marches through the forest on lap 3, which is pretty neat. Nice little addition. Also, these piranha plants are now spitting fireballs at us, which is also not in the DS version. It's great to see that they put a little bit of extra effort into making this track a bit nicer, but it still is just another simple Mario circuit. How many of those do we have in this game now? Like 7, 8? This race goes into the D tier simply for repetition and taking up precious DLC slots from worthy contenders. At number 7, we have Riverside Park. This race, of course, continues the trend of Game Boy Advance glow-ups that we've been getting every single wave. I mean, just look at what the old Riverside Park looks like. This is just drop-dead gorgeous compared to that. And that was already pretty good looking for a Game Boy race. I love this portion when you drive up through the cave and out through the waterfall. It's just such a neat little sequence and kind of adds to the adventure jungle aspect of this whole race. I also love the general vibe of the jungle here. Just look at the diversity of plants and greenery and trees we have in the background. Something that also really sets the vibe for this course is that orange tint we have in the sky. That looked awesome on the Game Boy game, and I'm so glad that they kept it here. It's also neat how the Tuies here all have items in their air spouts. If you hit them with an item or knock into them, they'll drop those items for you. So it's just nice to see them adding some extra course hazards to these old handheld tracks that might otherwise fall completely flat if they were strictly faithful remasters. I think where this race does fall a little flat for me is the simplicity of its layout and the lack of corner cuts and shortcuts. When you compare this race to the other tracks in this wave, it is evident that there isn't nearly as much room for creativity here as there is in these other tracks. You drive 3 identical, relatively short laps and then you're done. While it is a nice looking course, I just can't quite shake the feeling that it could be a bit more fun to drive. That's why I'm dropping Riverside Park into the C tier. At number 6, we have Waluigi Stadium. Now I get that this might be a hot take, but hear me out. Double Dash was my first Mario Kart. It's one of my favorite games ever, and I am ecstatic to finally be seeing some Double Dash representation in the Booster Course Pass. However, in Double Dash, this race had a certain grittiness to it. And maybe it was the way the karts felt as they bounced along the dirt mounds. Maybe it was how slippery and slidey it felt to drift around these muddy turns. But that grittiness fit this race perfectly. The Wii version took it a step further with the half pipes completing that stunt bike arena feel. For some reason, to me, it feels like that grittiness is just kind of missing here. It feels too straightforward, too clean, too polished. Like we're driving on a tame, padded down dirt road and not some disgustingly muddy slop fest of a track. I mean, the mud doesn't even show up on the tires of your car here. I understand what they're going for with like the glossy shine. It is a nice lighting effect, but for some reason driving on it just doesn't feel like it's muddy. Does that make sense? There's one particular section that I want to point out that I am just incredibly disappointed by, and that is the section with the piranha plant pipes. Honestly, who okayed this? Because the way they laid this out basically deletes any challenge that these obstacles used to pose in the past. This section was great in the original version because weaving from left to right to avoid the piranha plants was part of the challenge, part of the fun. You could really ram into those guys and lose all your momentum if you weren't careful. But here, the first 2 piranhas are kind of up on this angle looking looking upwards towards the sky, not bothering anyone. They're nowhere near the main part of the track. And the third guy is just kind of awkwardly still on the ground, but he's off to the right. You can just drive straight on through here without any worry of collision. And to top that off, these fireballs don't even hurt you. Look, I'm just sitting in the middle of them and it's doing nothing. It's clearly making contact and I'm not spinning out. I just want to feel something. The challenge and the fun is completely removed from this segment. Don't get me wrong, this is still a fun course and its layout does enough to just put it above the other two races that I have at the bottom of this list. But the bigger reason it's low is because I feel like this version doesn't retain what made this race great 15 years ago. This was the track that I was the most excited for in this wave. And honestly, I was let down. Justice for Double Dash, man. There are two positive things that I will say because this race isn't a complete train wreck. I do like these new floating cage shortcuts. It kind of adds something new to the race. They are pretty cool and they're relatively challenging to land, so it adds to the fun of the race. And overall, even though I did criticize the glossy shine on the mud, it is a visually stunning remaster. This race does look better than it's ever looked before, but it's just the way this thing functions now that I'm just not really sure that I'm on board with. Waluigi Stadium, much to my heart's discontent, is going into the C tier. At number 5, we have Amsterdam Drift. This right here is an okay city course, and I'll be honest, even though it's not super high on the list, I do believe that it is better than a lot of the city courses we've gotten before. But it just has that same generic daytime city vibe that I've criticized in the past for being a bit repetitive between the city courses, but this one has some extra spice because we get to drive through this windmill section and even through a field of little flowers. I mean, look at that, it's beautiful. And of course, it's only natural that we get to drive through the canals here, right? I mean, come on, that's what I do whenever I go to Amsterdam. Just go swimming through the sewage system. Is that really the most glamorous part of Amsterdam they could show us? Wow, that's a nice drain cover. Honestly, the fact that we spend so much time in what feels like a sewage system is fairly lame compared to what the other city courses in this wave have to offer, but it is a relatively fun course, so it goes into the B tier, which is sort of becoming like the United Nations. At number 4, we have Bangkok Rush. Bangkok Rush has some pretty unique vibes for a city track. It has this golden hour shine that really distinguishes it from the rest of the cities. The first thing I thought when I drove lap 1 for the first time was how unique it felt to be driving through this canal, tricking off the rowboats. I definitely prefer this take on racing through a canal compared to what we saw in Amsterdam Drift. This just has a little more charm to it and doesn't feel nearly as disgusting. And there's room for creativity here since you're able to go up these steps and get into the train platform. That's something I didn't actually realize until my second playthrough, by the way. One of the parts that really caught me off guard on my first playthrough was this square parking garage ramp at the end of the third lap. I kept thinking it would straighten out, but it just kept going on up and I kept ramming into the wall. I realize now that the best approach is just to drift through the whole thing, which is pretty satisfying. I now like the parking garage, but they really got me on that first attempt. I also like how the parking garage section shoots you out and has you bouncing on top of these colored tents. Really neat stuff. But what I think is cooler here is if you actually go under the tents, there's this cool little like food bazaar with string lights all throughout that I bet a lot of people won't even see because they're just gonna be bouncing on top of the tents. You just gotta slow down sometimes and appreciate those little details that you might otherwise just speed on by. If you've watched my other videos, you know that I'm normally critical of these city tracks, and to be honest, I was pretty upset when I found out that this wave had 3 of them. I mean, what are we doing here, putting 3 tour tracks in one wave? That's almost half the wave. But Bangkok has opened my eyes. There is an appeal to some of these city tracks. Maybe it's the fact that it takes place at a different time of day, maybe it's the course layout, but I enjoyed this track. Also, can someone tell me in the comments if there are usually crabs just chilling like this in Bangkok? Bangkok goes into the A tier for me. At number 3, we have Singapore Speedway. If Bangkok Rush opened my eyes and expanded my horizons for how much I thought I could enjoy a city track, then Singapore Speedway solidified that. Like I said, when I found out this wave had 3 cities, I was upset, distraught. But damn it, Singapore specifically really turned out to be one of the highlights for me. Just look at the beautiful evening city lights, Ferris wheel turning about, the soccer field, which you can go on, by the way. Damn. This is already a better soccer game than Mario Strikers Battle League. This city just looks like an incredibly fun place to be. Even these Goombas are having fun. Look at them splashing around in their infinity pool. What are these tree-looking things? And what is that crazy-looking hotel I mean, come on, like shit. Does Singapore actually have all this stuff? I wanna go there. The soundtrack really goes hard here too. Take a listen. One nitpick I do have is that I kept thinking that this part was the finish line, but it is not. I repeat, this is not the finish line. Do not stop driving here. You will lose the race. Overall, I think it's safe to say that this is my favorite city track so far, and it's going straight into the A tier. Before we get to our top 2 races, if you've made it this far into the video and you like what you see, why not just hit the subscribe button? We're trying to get to 10,000 this year. It's free. And I have been told that there are health benefits to subscribing to my channel. Coming in at number 2, we have DK Summit. This race was awesome when it first came out on Mario Kart Wii in 2008, and it's still awesome now in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe in 2023. This race has everything. A barrel cannon, a ski slope, a barrel cannon, some dope half pipes, a barrel cannon, and it even has some snowboarding Shy Guys. Wow. Did I mention that it has a freaking barrel cannon? On a serious note on the barrel cannon, I love how this is a ski slope, so the natural way to get to the top would be zipping up the lift line, but DK just said screw it. We're blasting them to the top. Driving down the ski slope on this race, tricking off the mounds of slow, trying to mushroom jump this gap, it's all as fun as it's ever been. But of course, not even the high-ranking races are free from criticism. I do have one nitpick. I feel like this half-pipe section doesn't quite function as well as it did back on Mario Kart Wii. Here's some Wii footage. As you can see, you could really just glide along the top of this half-pipe straight through it to the turn. It was really satisfying to do it that way. Whereas here, it just feels a little bit clunky. You can't just like cut straight across like butter anymore. The game tries to put you a little higher in the air, and there's even this massive clod of snow that just kind of gets in the way and ruins your momentum. Kinda lame. That's really my only criticism here though. Overall, this course is great fun like it's always been. It's beautiful looking, and those of you who have watched some of my other videos know that I'm a bit of a sucker for these snow ice courses, so this course does line up with my personal tastes. One last thought here, I don't normally get distracted by the ads on the sides of the course, but this one caught my eye. Comment below what you think burning DK sports drink tastes like. I'm curious. I want to try it. Is it like a Gatorade? Is it like Monster? I don't know. What do you think? I bet you it's disgusting. Anyway, DK Summit is going straight into the S tier. And of course, at number 1, we have Yoshi's Island, and ladies and gentlemen, I don't think there are any surprises here. After the absolute disaster that was Sky High Sunday in Wave 2, Nintendo knew they had to deliver with one of these brand new courses, and man oh man did they deliver. This race is absolute bliss. This race had me smiling from ear to ear the first time I played it. This race is just an absolute love letter to Yoshi's Island. A bunch of classic Yoshi's Island enemies are here, basking about. Shy Guys on stilts, snowman dudes waddling around, giant blargs. You've got Poochie chilling on a mailbox at the starting line. The coins are Yoshi coins. There's even a little billboard with some art from the original game at the end of the lap. While the Yoshi's Island references and graphics alone are enough to carry this track, they didn't skimp on the layout either. It's a very engaging race that has us driving through each different world from Yoshi's Island, from the grassy fields to the dungeon to the crystal cave, up the snowy mountain, finally into the clouds. I'm pretty sure that like fully covers worlds 1 through 5 of the original Yoshi's Island game. I also really love the little shortcut at the end with the red path that spawns when you hit the question mark cloud, but that cloud is tougher to hit than it looks. I actually miss it most laps, and a lot of times right when I think I'm gonna hit it, it just dodges right out of the way. I actually really appreciate that they didn't make that shortcut too easy to land, because I enjoy a little bit of challenge, and it makes it so that when you do land the shortcut, there's just this feeling of satisfaction and excitement. One little detail about the graphics here that just really helps bring the ambience to life is the leaves that are falling in the first section of the race. It's a really subtle detail, but it really makes this initial image when you load in pretty remarkable. Just take a second and just look at this. I think my favorite surprise here is that they actually replaced the end of race music with the level complete music from Yoshi's Island. An already amazing course just leaves us on one last really charming note. Here, I'm just gonna play it real quick. As someone who did play the original Yoshi's Island for the NES, I just love this race. And when a race makes you smile from ear to ear the first time you play it, that is just how you know it's a good race. Which is why I'm proud to put Yoshi's Island into the S tier. And now I'm going to toss things over to the head of the amendment committee, who has spearheaded a thorough review process of all the rankings on this list so far. Thank you very much for joining us today. After much deliberation, self-reflection, community input, the Game Guide 53 Amendment Committee has reached the conclusion that we were wrong about 2 of our previous rankings. The amendments to the list are as follows. Exhibit A, Sky High Sunday. When this race first came out, I thought it was bad. We all thought it was bad. But after months of replaying it, and after months of never getting excited to play it even a single time, we hereby demote Sky High Sunday from C tier to F tier, effective immediately. This discrepancy was highlighted by YouTube user Zenkoku, who mentioned that he was unhappy to see Sky High Sunday higher than Alpine Pass or Rock Mountain. We agree with his reasoning, and further, we feel that the addition of Yoshi's Island sets a new standard for brand new DLC tracks. It has set a new bar that an eyesore like Sky High Sunday could never clear. We are confident that this is the correct decision, and so we amend the list accordingly. Exhibit B, Sky Garden. As we're seeing more and more Game Boy Advance remasters making their way into the Booster Course Pass and showing us what it really means to reimagine and remaster a track from that time to fit into the modern day, it is becoming more and more clear how poorly the remaster for Sky Garden was handled. That race, compared to the other GBA remasters, displays a lack of faith to the source material, a noticeably reduced difficulty and length, and we feel that it would be more at home among the ranks of the D tier. This amendment is also effective immediately. The committee would also like to point out that the topic of Toad Circuit continues to yield ongoing dispute. We are aware that there is a vocal faction of our community that would like to see Toad Circuit higher than F tier. We see you and we hear you. Unfortunately, our studies on this topic are inconclusive, so we are unable to say at this time whether or not we will be upgrading Toad Circuit. For the time being, it will remain in the F tier. We thank you for your patience as we do look further into this matter. That concludes the official Amendment Committee report. If you or a loved one sees something on this list that you feel is out of place, please report that in the comments below. We will take your feedback into account as we consider future amendments. Your support in generating this list is greatly appreciated. Thank you. Here's a little treat for those of you who have made it to the very end of the video. It's a Wave 4 fun fact. Did you know that Wave 4 is the first wave of this DLC cycle that does not have a single bouncy mushroom? Wave 1 had one in Sky Garden. Wave 2 had them all over Mushroom Gorge. Wave 3 has one in 3DS Rainbow Road. And now we have Wave 4 and there isn't a single bouncy mushroom. But it does have a barrel cannon.